6 hours. 6 hours I spent on one single encounter in Tactics. And at 11 p.m., after 16 hours of playing, I had to declare defeat. I just don't think it was possible. Welcome back to Final Fantasy Tactics, ladies and gentlemen, where we are at the end of the game. We have not finished it yet. We are literally 2 boss fights from completion. And it is with great sadness that I declare that for the first time in a long, long time, we could not outplay the game despite our issues being there. Which is really sad in a tactical game, but I think we tried everything available to us in every single way, shape, or form, and it just was not possible. I have no doubts that there is some... Well, we know there is some very lucky rolls of the dice that could absolutely make this fight doable, but it would be completely RNG. It would be absolutely out of my control. I might as well not be playing. Such things as being able to... Well, let's just describe this encounter. This is possibly one of the most devious video game level maps I've ever seen. Like, the sheer amount of attention to detail they've put in here to screw you over is honestly really impressive. The reason we couldn't overcome it, let's get that out of the way, just radically underleveled. Radically underleveled. But this game expects you to grind a lot. It expects you to be, one, very, very seasoned with the game, probably know a lot of the tricks, such as you are able to just get insane amount of levels and power from like map number 1 in the game. Literally, as you start the game, you could just endlessly farm crazy experience. I did check a speedrun of the game and saw that they were unlocking end game jobs or the later jobs by like map 3. You could do that in this game, and the developers knew that as well. And so they expected that you would probably be doing a lot of grinding. I don't like grinding. This is no secret. This is no surprise. I do not like grinding in any way and was just going along with the story as it went. Now, there was a couple of things I didn't do because we were definitely like approaching the end. I want to move on to Yakuza, right? I want to move on to different things. And that was like some of the side stories because they generally give you another character. I'm not going to use another character, right? I've got my team that I really like. They've been through everything with me. They've got a story. They've grown with me. The replacements that come in that are overpowered, we've had robots join and things like that. Is like, I'm not super interested in those. I do like taking their armor off them for sure, but not something I wanted. So we had like Sid join the party. Didn't want to use Sid. Like him as a character in the story, but I did want his Excalibur, for example. I took his Excalibur. Somebody else had something called Save the Queen, which was a wonderful sword, which got destroyed. And we were up to, like, the story missions and doing really well. I want to put this out there. We were doing really well. There was a couple of maps that were very, very tough. In particular, I want to give shout-outs to the beginning of the final gauntlet. So essentially, the end game, Chapter 4 of Final Fantasy Tactics, goes in a very normal pattern. You will attack a castle where you'll do a multi-fight where you're locked in. Remember, it's a lot of people are asking, like, why aren't we doing X, Y, and Z? So I'll just do a brief explanation here. When you begin these sort of raid gauntlets, we'll call them raids for now, but instead of being one battle on a map, and that's it, and then you move on somewhere else, you are locked in, which means if you return to the world map to maybe go and resupply, get different armor, buy some accessories that you were missing, you will reset the whole thing and you have to start battle 1 again. And this just gets longer and longer as the game goes on. So the first one is like 2 battles, then it's 3 battles, and then by the end it's like 4 or 5. And some of those fights are really hard. Really, really hard. So the temptation to just be like, man, yeah, I didn't bring enough potions. I need to go back to the world map. It's probably going to set you back maybe a couple of hours, something along those lines, to go and do that. And plus, it's less fun. And this is where the crux of this comes from for me. In a tactical game, be it XCOM, be it this, or be, you know, any other game where there's a really hard challenge in front of us, in a game with experience and levels, you can always just go and get more powerful. You can always do that. You can be like, oh, okay, this is really hard. I'm just going to get more powerful. That is the very normal and standard way that this should be done. But in a tactical game, there's often ways of outthinking what's going on. Like better positioning, correct use of spells, where we're using our units, how we're buffing them up, all that kind of thing, can dramatically outplay any level difference that's going on. And that's really fun. It's a really satisfying experience for me to do that. So that's the way I like to play, and not just go and like grind. And it's like, okay, I'm now either as powerful or more powerful than the enemies, so I should win. I don't really like that. But that is what the game expects you to do. That's the normal thing to do, right? That is what is supposed to happen. Anyway, we get to the final gauntlet series in the Necro Hall. This is where they're raising the Angel of Death, or whatever, Angel of Blood, they're calling it, in the story mode. And we're going through quite a long series of fights. Now, one of these fights that kind of... There was 2 fights that led me to believe this was going to be extremely hard, but doable, and that's the important thing, but very doable. We beat them all within maybe 40 minutes. The first one was an underground basement that was just filled with knights and monks and 1 archer and massive walls to separate you, so the archer could shoot over the walls and get you. And these guys each had around 600 to 700 HP each. And I think there's 4 knights, there's 2 monks, and the archer. So a lot of units compared to your 5. And they all, to give you context, my normal damage dealers deal somewhere around 150 to 200 damage. And my melee guys can do slightly more or slightly less, depending on the rolls. They might get 200, they might get slightly more, which means they all need to hit a single target multiple times in order to potentially kill it. And that doesn't include effective health. This was a whole discussion we had yesterday about what is their actual effective health, right? They might have I could tell you a value and how much we hit for, and that seems, that's not too bad, right? But their effective health is way, way more because they all have massive parry. So trying to hit them is sometimes impossible. You can spend 3 or 4 turns and be completely unable to hit one of the units. And also they have just massive damage reduction on them as well. And in this fight in particular, the monks also had something called First Strike, which meant that you could not hit them with melee. If you attempted to hit them with melee, they just hit you instead. So melee was out of the question. I was like, oh. So their effective health pool is something like 2,000 to 3,000 actually, like in terms of how much damage output you're doing versus what is registered. So PoE players will understand what I'm talking about, right? Is if you mix all these things together, your effective health pool is enormous. It's absolutely huge. Needless to say, this fight was brutal, absolutely brutal, because they also could one-hit most of my units. Nasty stuff. Nasty stuff. If they got caught without a buff or something, they could essentially one-hit my units. Especially my clothies, especially, if I can't get to like huge HP. Nasty. But beat it. But beat it with clever positioning. I managed to make them funnel into a certain spot, got a little bit of AoE out, managed to clear out the knights, managed to like break their weapons, dramatically reduce their damage, managed to sneak people in, managed to get reses in certain spots, did all sorts of clever things. And then managed to kite the monks around and used ranged spells on them to bring them down, and use crystals to get more mana so we could do more summons. So all this kind of stuff is really fun for me. And I think that's the crux of situations like this. It's really, really fun for me to figure this out and overcome this massive obstacle. And then what's interesting is the next fight in the series was ridiculously easy because it was a caster boss. He's surrounded by samurais and ninjas, and I was like, oh god, because those units hit really hard. They will hit my units for way more than their HP. But the actual boss itself, the objective was a caster, so I was able to kill him in like 2 turns. I was like, oh, okay, we had a hard fight, good fight. Then we got the next most brutal fight of the night. Holy cow. Dudes. One boss that was practically unhittable. I'm not joking there. Really unhittable. His opening move is to destroy your armor, unless you have already been aware of this, which is what the game expects, and you'll be like, oh, this guy crushes your armor every turn. So every time he gets a turn, he breaks your armor and just destroys it. It's gone. It's not like it comes back at the end of the fight. It is destroyed. It is gone. If you don't have armor, he destroys your weapon. And he destroyed my Save the Queen weapon, which is like 7 or 8 top-end damage, more than what I can actually get. Like, it was... And we just lost it. It was destroyed. Nothing we could do about it. Then his room is 2 black mages, 2 summoners, and 2 time mages. So it's a completely, fully hasted caster team that's dropping flares and leviathans all over your team and essentially just eradicates them. So every single turn he gets, he either completely breaks your armor and reduces you to 1 HP, or he kills you. Every turn. There was nothing we could do about that. Every time he got a turn, he would either kill you or destroy part of your team's armor or one of their weapons. And you can't replace that unless, again, you went back and farmed and got a different ability to re-equip a weapon during combat. So you're now DPSs, especially dual wielders, and only have one sword. This was horrendous. But we figured it out. And that's the cool thing. That's what excites me. We figured it out. We figured it's like, hey, if we pull really far back to the back wall and we like buff up, so we draw all the mages together and we get like shell, which nullifies magic damage, and then we quickly jump down and surround him and just really throw everything we can at him within like 3 or 4 turns, we can just kill him while the mages are... Well, we have 3 turns of shell, and that will keep us alive long enough to be able to kill him. And we did it. Really good. And then we get to the infamous map that took 6 hours. Evil. Evil design. Absolutely evil. They created a map with special units on it. These hydras. Like Tiamat is in there and a few others. Essentially dragons. 3 dragons. A behemoth, or a dark behemoth. And then the boss and his chemist. That both have guns that can shoot across the entire map. Like, you are never out of range of these guns. Nothing you can do about it. They don't hit super hard. They hit for like 200. But they're a problem because there's 2 of them and they go very quickly. And then there's a chasm in the middle that you can't get over without massive movement. A bridge to the north and a bridge to the south where the units will come round. They start on the right-hand side of the map, you start on the left. And all the terrain has been designed in a way that you cannot get your units in a position to buff them all. You can't do that. There's nowhere that's able to do that. So what is the problem? Why couldn't we beat this map? All these hydras have very special abilities called triples. They have triple attack, triple fire, and triple lightning. Each of them hits for 200 plus. The average HP of my units is about 300. Some of my melee guys have like 400 or 350. My casters have like 250. It's around that kind of 250 to 300. So it was a case of if they got hit unprotected, they all died. Like, there was nothing we could do about that. And then what happens is these, because they're creatures, they have a really weird AI. And I know a lot about this fight now because we tried everything. Where they don't really move too much unless they can kill you. And so they'll go very slowly. And then when they can get to you, they will just kill you. But that's manipulatable. We can draw them around. And they lock onto different units. And that's the thing you can manipulate as well. Is like they're always trying to get to a certain unit. So if you move that character into a certain position, they'll go around the bottom of the map. And then you can jump over and they'll try and come back round. And so you can sort of kite them. The big danger here is not only the dragons, which will one-hit you if they get you. The dark behemoth moves very slowly. But once it gets to you, it will murder everybody. Because it hits for 999. That's it. It just hits you for way more health than you could effectively have. On top of that, this is where the chemist and the actual boss, who are both using guns, actually becomes a major, major evil point. Because all the way through the fight, every turn they get, they will bully somebody who they think is the lowest HP or easiest to kill. And they will just constantly harass them for like 200, 200, 200, 200. And you have to keep healing them. And they will also disable you. So you have to change your gear to be immune to disable, because their gunshots disable you, which means you're locked out of using any ability. I think it's 3 to 4 turns. Like, your character is just effectively useless. It's just a sack of health walking around. So you've got to deal with that at the same time. And then it became a case of, how do we fix this? I think, actually, we tried a number of things, which, again, I talked about the dice rolls, if this would work. Effectively, if we had we were like, okay, if we get a thief who can steal hearts on the chemist, then he'll start shooting his own teammates and the dragons might kill him. That's pretty cool. But it was like I think it was a 43% chance. And it landed for us 1 in, I think, the 6 tries we did it. It was not representative of 50-50. And the problem was, you had to get a thief, which is a very weak character, kind of into the danger zone in order to even try and make this work. And if it didn't work, the thief died every time and was just, like, lost because you couldn't get more units over there to res them. Rezzing is kind of impossible here without using a rise, which reses you with full health. Because the way these two gunslingers work, which actually becomes the really evil part, is they will immediately shoot anybody who gets rezzed. So if you use Phoenix Down or Raise, which reses you with like less than full health, they'll just kill you as soon as you get up. Anywhere on the map. Just anywhere on the map. It doesn't matter. So then we were like, okay, what if we break the weapons on the ranged units? But that was a 20%, 26% chance to be able to do that. Reliable, no. Again, this is what I'm talking about. We did discuss, like, we could reset until the dice just rolls in our way. We get the mind control on the chemist. This was also the same for Entice the Beast. You can mind control the beasts. You can do that as well, and they will join your team. But that is a 20% chance. It's 1 in 5. So, yeah, we got it to happen once, and it was great, because all the dragons killed didn't kill each other, but they all, like, swarmed on that and ignored me. But reliable, good strategy, not really. That's just waiting until the gods favor us and we win. Not exactly great. So that was kind of out as a strategy. I'm not going to go through everything we tried here. We tried a lot. And I want to give a special shout out here to the min-maxers who know this game inside out, who joined in this process in order to try and solve it. What could we do? And we came up with some really cool tech to make this happen, to try and make it happen. I will say this, we got very close a couple of times. Very close. We killed all the dragons, but by the time we'd gotten there, the Dark Behemoth is running rampant. You know, it was happening far too late. And ultimately, the reality is, as I had to concede at the end, we just simply do not have enough HP and damage. That's it. We just don't have it. It's taking us multiple turns to kill things. Can't be allowed in this fight. Our guys are just getting killed. Their rolls. I don't know how this background system works, but the level difference. To give you context, we're about, on some characters, 15 levels below the required, or what the enemies are. It's a lot. It was a lot. We're a lot behind. And in that case, I think your rolls tend to just be the lower end of potentials, right? Or there's some sort of like debuff. In WoW, I would call it like glancing blows, but that's not really the system here. But you get the idea. It's like when there's a level difference, your effectiveness against something of a higher level is just less. And that is very noticeable in like the amount of times we just could not hit units. Our damage rolls were really low. Effectively, we even tried this like chemist breaker, who would just be able to shoot people from really far away and break their weapons, break their armor, break their magic, break their speed. Really cool tech to try that out. That was very cool. But even with a 40% chance to hit, I think he hit 1 in 12 of his shots. He had a 45 or 46% chance to make contact and hit 1 in 12. And was just dying all the time. So it was sucked. So yeah, I had to concede at the end. We just could not find a way through. And that's how I left it. Is like, damn. There is just, I do not see at this point a pathway forward without literally just being stronger. And I did think to myself, as I'm kind of done here. Although we are 2 bosses away, this one and the next fight are the last fights. A lot of people were saying, like, you're pretty much at the end of the game. This is it. I have this problem, which is like, if we go out and we farm, and we just come back and we kill it, I will not get the satisfaction of doing this at all. That's not very fun for me. And I'd be like, okay, even though that is the intended way, I understand that. I'm not blind to it, but it's something that I'm. But also, we're at the end of the game. Like, finishing the game with like 2 bosses left is really dumb, really, really dumb. So I think I'm going to give it the morning here. I want to play some WoW Alpha, and I want us to start Yakuza at least on Monday. So I think I'm going to do that. I think I'm going to just get in. Grind like 5 levels or something, just be a tiny bit stronger, and then go in and finish it off while it's still a somewhat compelling fight. I might even go a bit stronger, to be honest, just to finish up and not get stuck there for another hour. It's like, okay, it's doable now, but we're going to be here for 2 hours. I don't fancy that either. So I think that is the plan. I have to say, we got close. We got really close. Really close. And I'm still happy. It was, like I say, it was nice that a lot of the experts on this game were like, yeah, dude, this is like crazy what's happening right now. The fact you're getting this far is nuts. I appreciate that. It would have been nice to finish it up though. But at a certain point, it is an RPG. It is a leveling experience and grindy game, and at a certain point that's catching up with you. And the fact that we got to the second to last encounter of the whole game in the hardest mode before that like actually put a giant, you know, no entry sign up is pretty nice for me. I quite like that. Been a hell of a game though. I have to say this, I'm disappointed obviously, but it was really fun trying to figure it out and learning how all this stuff worked. It was really, really fun. And every time we got close and people were like losing their minds, like, oh my God, this might be it. You know, we managed to take down the third dragon. We were like, okay, what do we do here? And getting to a turn that's like a pivotal turn, like what we choose to do next is a live or die situation. But the reality was, it was always die. All right, there you go. Bye-bye. Well, it took 9 hours. 9 hours of my life dedicated to destroying one map in Tactician as we entered the finale of the game. I was unsure what to do. My personal feeling was, you know what? We need to finish this. We have come to literally the second to last battle of this game in Tactician mode, blind. We didn't use any of the like named powerful units, not out of some goal or mission or some weird objective, but more that the characters that I'd started with and named and grown with had a story. I was attached to those characters. I like those characters. They were named after members of the stream. I wanted them to stick around. I didn't want to just sub them out for more powerful units. That would be like a second playthrough angle for me. But we hit this wall. We hit this wall of the dragons on this map, and we tried so many things. We gave it 6 hours in our current state to try and overcome it and could not find a way. And as I said, we had people who were experts in this game like, I don't know, dude, this is like, it's an RNG fiesta. You could maybe get like really good rolls and overcome it somehow. You could mind control the dragons and things like that, but it's really unlikely given what the problem was. So what was the problem? Literally just levels. The overall level of my units was now like 15 levels behind what the story was throwing at us. The game expects some grinding. It's an old school type RPG. Of course it expects some grinding. It expected you to do some various other things. So I gave the choice to my audience. I was like, what do we do? We could turn the difficulty down. We can grind a little bit. Or we could just move on. And it would be left unfinished. Now, my personal preference here was to just grind a little bit and just get some arbitrary levels so we're not getting multiplied by the damage dealings, because that's what was going on. Like the way the damage rolls work is if there's a vast level difference, it magnifies up, which meant they were just one-shotting everything that came near them. They were just killing my units instantaneously. And so their vote was to turn the difficulty down. And it's not a democracy, because I said, it just feels like such a disappointment to reach all this way, to see the finish line, and then like just move the finish line forward. That sucks. That's not nice. But people wanted the conclusion. They wanted the ending. So I was like, we're going to do it. We're going to get a few levels. So the way I understood this to work is that you basically go into a map. People were suggesting you do it with a yellow chocobo, which will just run away and heal itself. And you essentially just spam the buffs onto the characters, and they'll just constantly gain experience every turn without having to attack or heal or anything like that, and they'll just constantly gain experience and levels, and you can just do this in one map. This is what people can do at level 1 if they want to. They can just sit in the very first map of the game and just cap their characters if you want to do that. Okay. I set this up. I unlocked every job because there was one more job I didn't have. I had Dancer, I had Bard, and then there was one job I didn't have. So while we were setting this up, I unlocked everything, which was the Mimic class. So people have asked me to tier list the units. I didn't play them all enough. I never touched the Arithmetician because it was very apparent from just the discourse that was going on that the Arithmetician is broken and can actually nullify a lot of things. So I was like, well, I don't really want that. The Bard and Dancer seemed interesting but boring. They do a dance, and as long as they're undisturbed, they hit everything on the map. Probably for very little and probably with a low hit chance, but as long as they're just left to do what they're going to do, they'll just like slow everything, they'll debuff everything, they'll kill everything, and they'll buff all your units, and they just sort of like take them out of your party. That sounded miserable. I didn't want to do that either. But the Mimic seemed interesting. Doesn't equip any gear, and just duplicates whatever somebody does. I was very curious as to how this works. Is it every turn? Do you do a whole turn of moves and then you get a choice of what you want to do with it? No. I don't know if anybody really likes this unit. I can't imagine a world where I could be bothered setting this thing up. I really can't. So what it does is every turn your units take, it will do it. But it will also do it the exact... So if you aim 4 tiles from your unit to cast a spell, or you're right next to a unit so you do a melee attack, it will just do that attack into thin air. It's exactly... It doesn't like go to where the unit was or anything like that. It'll just do it. And it only gets the ability to move in its normal turn order. So the prospect of this being useful to me was 0. Net 0. Funny though. But one thing we did find is it levels very, very quickly in terms of its overall level, because it has no gear and it doesn't move every single turn. So it basically gets 5x the amount of turns of everybody else. Is it levels really, really quickly. So we had the Mimic in there. I didn't know that before we did this. I had the Mimic in the thing just to see what it does. It did some comedy moments. Once we had buffed our units a lot, and I pressed like throw rock, because it turned out that self-buffing gives a set amount of experience, like 10. So it would have taken like 12 casts just to get a level at that point. But if you heal or do something on somebody else, you get twice as much, which reduce it in half, obviously. So what I was doing was throwing rocks and then healing with chakra the other person. And it threw rock at Cass, I believe it was. I hit for like 600 damage. It just killed her. I was like, that is really funny. Like, the Mimic is capable of doing some really funny things. But by the by, we've got all the jobs unlocked, and we're doing this leveling process. I got bored of doing this after a few minutes. I put a target of getting them to level 50, which was still below the level of the content we were doing, but it was like 5 levels higher than we were. So I was like, that maybe should do it. But it became apparent very quickly. It's like, this is actually a long process. This is something you want to be doing for like a couple of hours, probably. On top of that, you have to manually do it. You can't automate it in any way. Like, there is an auto battler in the game, but it basically sets tendencies to the units. So, and if they can't do those tendencies, they will kill whatever's on the map. So that doesn't work. You need to individually go to each unit, select the unit, select you want to do an ability, select the buff, select you want to do it on that person, select you don't want to move, and then select the direction you want to face. It's a lot of key presses per unit. I got very good at it. Like, my muscle memory kicked in very quickly, so I could do it very fast, but it's still like 7 or 8 key presses per unit per turn, and it kind of got boring. And then when the XP dried up, in terms of like it's 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, and the levels required like 12 or so turns to get around, and we did a lot of manipulation here. We like tailwinded the lower level people so they got more turns and things like that, so they could go faster and speed that process up. But ultimately, I was done with it after a few minutes. And I was like, okay, we got a couple of levels. We got a few levels. It's fine. We'll leave it there and get out of here, because this is just really boring. It's not interesting, and I want to just get on with it. So, the obvious concern after we'd done this from some people was like, okay, so you're just going to smash everything to pieces now because you're stronger. Nope. No. That is not the case. And that became very apparent on the first map that I had to redo, because it's a gauntlet of maps that I had to go through again. No, not the case. But I did take in some knowledge, and this was the most important thing. I knew about the boss that crushes all your armor every single turn, so I picked up Safeguard on everybody, so meaning that armor cannot be destroyed. That was very useful. I picked up Auto Potion on Ramza, which is just the best healing in the game. Any hit has a really high chance of just the self-healing for 150. Even if they get hit for more than that, it's fine. And then getting into it. Not easy. Hell no. Absolutely far from it. My units were still very capable of being one-shot by a lot of these units, depending on who they hit and what protections they had up. So I still had to be very, very good with what I was doing. Which made it fun. I was actually happy about that. I did not want to just smurf everything. I would have been disappointed doing that. And that did not happen, thankfully. So I got through the first few maps where things played out a little differently. Having to take things like Safeguard meant you couldn't take dual wield. So my damage dealers were doing half the damage they were previously doing. So when I got through some battles before leveling by just chopping units up, I couldn't do that anymore. So I had to like maneuver around and play out the fights very, very differently. Like the mage fight, which I did in 3 turns previously, turned into like a 15 or 16 turn fight to play it through. But ultimately, I got back to the dragons. I got back to the dragons. Oh boy. This is my, I'm going to put it out now. This was my final boss. This was by far, and it's not even close. It's not even close. The most difficult encounter I did in this game. This thing is monstrously hard. Really, really hard. There were probably a chain of 9 turns where every turn required so much consideration and pre-thought and planning as to what the enemy units would do, who was going to go next, how would this play out, this person will die here, but then we can do this and this, and we had to like real chess moves 30 moves ahead to see what was going to happen. And if it didn't play out that way, I always planned for the worst case scenarios. Like, I will res this guy, but he dies here, but he does soak a hit on a guy that we've got HP on, while this Arise is going on over here, which gives enough HP to get over here. And if it ever deviated from that, even remotely, it was better for us. That was how I played it out. And on those occasions, and it happened a couple of times where one of the units didn't kill somebody, or didn't go where we thought it was going to go, and in fact did something else, it was just such a massive victory. It was like, yes, actually did it. Unbelievable. Can't believe it. This puts us like 2 moves ahead now. This is so good. And we had the War of the Chemist. This chemist in this fight has the most ludicrous levels of evasion. Effective health is what I've talked about a lot in the last couple of videos. And although he's got like 700 HP, his effective health is like 5,000 or something, if I was to really roughly estimate it. It's crazy. You just cannot hit this guy. He dodges everything. He can't be stopped. He's just, he can shoot you from all over the map, and he's constantly re-resing the dragons. He's just Phoenix downing them all the time, and the behemoth especially, the dark behemoth that one-shots any of your units. He's constantly resing it. And that dark behemoth has so much evasion that you can't just lower its power and nullify it in any way. So this battle was extraordinary. And when we finally tipped the scales, which was when we killed the chemist, and it stopped resing, and then it could no longer res all the dragons and the dark behemoth. Once that finally happened, that was such a sweet, sweet joy. It was an incredible moment just to see it happen and be like, oh, we've got this. There's only the boss itself left. That's it. And then people who were new to the stream or not been following this 9-hour marathon were like, why didn't you just kill the boss? And then when we finally got to DPS him again, we had tried that, obviously, previous day. Is people were like, oh, I get it. Not only does this guy heal every turn for like 80, he's also practically unhittable. Essentially, he's practically unhittable. Even from behind, he's just so unhittable. His effective health pool is enormous. And they were like, oh, I see now. Like, yeah, you need like 8-9 turns just to DPS this guy down. Like, with everybody attacking him. All people throwing attacks at him to get him down. But we did it. We got there. Best victory in the game. That was my final boss. Although not technically the final boss. The final boss is about to happen. What a disappointment this was in comparison to what we did. Funny though. I had a lot of fun during this one. It was almost like a kick off your shoes and relax kind of fight. I knew it was going to be a multi-phase fight. I knew that. And there's lots of... I would say one of the flaws of the game is that the bosses tend to do kind of the same thing. Is like if you clump up, they're going to do something horrible to you, so you should spread out immediately. Which I now do habitually. And it just stops a lot of what the boss does. The first boss is like this big yellow globulon monster. And all I did, just to test out what was going on, was just slow him down. That was it. I just slowed him down. Like, I had one character, my knight with dual wield, who was rending slow. And once that hits and the boss starts to lose turns, it's a snowballing effect from there. And I got him to the point where I don't think he had a turn for 50 turns. I'm not joking. It went to like 50. And he just was AFK. And I was like, oh, okay. And people were like, I think he's broken. And then other people noticed his turn number. He's like, nope, he just doesn't have a turn for 50 turns. Even though it was a logical tactical play to slow him down. So then I thought, well, this can't be the full fight. There's going to be another phase. So what I did is I buffed my melee. I had so many free turns. Why wouldn't I do that? I like buffed their physical damage on both of them, while I just had my other units sort of whittle the health of the boss down. So that when we went into phase 2, I had some very strong units which should help us out. That made total logical sense. They thought of that. They thought of that because although there is a phase 2, it actually restarts the battle fresh, so your units can't carry anything over. And I was like, oh, god damn it, because we killed it. And I was like, dude, I've got some kick-ass melee units here. And then it went, nope, stop the fight, reposition, and now you go fresh. And I was like, what a waste of time. Oh, well, in we go. So the final boss, Ultima. Ultima has arrived. Here's the final boss. And then spawns a bunch of ads. I'd seen these ads before in a previous fight, and they're horrible. They cast Ultima themselves. They have something called Unending Darkness, which one-shots people, and there's 4 of them. I was like, oh, God, this is not good. What to do? What to do? The trick here, actually, is your sister Alma. Sister Alma, who's been kidnapped and all those kinds of things. And Ultima is like the dark side of her, split soul kind of her. And then there's the like normal version that's also in the fight. She's incredibly weak. She dies in practically 1 hit from everything. But, and she dies in like the first turn of the round. She's KO'd. And I was like, I wonder, as I was playing it out and we knew we were going to wipe, I was like, I wonder if she does anything, because she's just lying on the floor. I wonder if this is a gimmick. So I rezzed her just to see what she would do. And sure enough, she throws out a spell called Aegis onto your units. Aegis not only gives you protection and shell and regeneration and float, I think, but also re-raise. Meaning that if you die, you'll just be automatically rezzed next turn. And I was like, oh, that's kind of cool, because a lot of these units one-shot you. So the idea is that Alma will run around and put Aegis on people, and when they inevitably get one-shot, they'll just be resurrected, and then Alma will cast Aegis on them again. So you can kind of keep units floating around. I was like, oh, I think that's the gimmick. Kind of. This seems like one of those things that's really good in normal mode and below Tactician. In Tactician, she simply has nowhere near enough mana, because mana costs are way more expensive, and not enough health to survive enough turns to get re-raise on your units. So I was goofing around at this point, because the fight just wasn't that dangerous. I had 1 unit running around just killing all the ads. And I kept her alive, and I gave her like a personal healer who was throwing ethers at her and keeping her alive. And when she died, we brought her back. And was just messing around in the fight. Because honestly, the fight didn't really do anything. Compared to what I'd been through by this point, it just wasn't that scary. I had my units spread out, so Ultima couldn't, even though it was casting Ultima, and the ads are casting Ultima, never hit more than 1 person. So with my chemist, I could just res them. It's fine. And just keep going around. In fact, our biggest fear was running out of X potions, because you come into this gauntlet with 100, but you do 5 fights, and everybody's got auto potions, so it uses them pretty quick. Let's put it that way. And she eventually died. I was slowing her down as well as the fight was going on. Like, if I had a free turn, I'd slow her down and kill all the ads, and it was just her. She did some hilarious things. The AI on this is kind of funny. When the ads despawn and they drop a treasure chest with loot on, she will warp to the loot to yoink it from you. Even though it's not that great, I assume. She will warp to the loot. It was hilarious to see her do this. We were like, are you kidding me? Like, she's actually going out of her way to take loot off you for this fight. I thought that was really funny. But she died, and that was the end of the game. Yeah, the final boss fight was my dragon fight. What an exceptionally difficult... This whole playthrough has been one of the most difficult gaming things I've done in a while. Very, very hard. My overall summary of the game, certainly the play out of the story at the end, is quite dark in places. A little fun and then very dark. I give this a high A, this game. I know some people love this game and be like, it's S tier all the way through. It loses a dramatic amount of points for me, if there was such a thing as points, but my gut feeling, due to the just insane amount of mid-combat dialogue. I detested this by the end. Detested it. I don't know who wrote this. I don't know who put this all together. This very elaborate, very intertwined story, which has obviously had a lot of care and attention to detail put into it to try and give these big twists and turns. But the joy of the game for me was the gameplay. And just having literal minutes, especially in the second half of the game, it is relentless. Minutes of dialogue that just plays out sometimes after each turn. And apparently, I didn't know this, if you have some of the named units in there, there's even more. They have flavor text that comes with them that just keeps it going and going and going. It was interesting to see people say, oh, this wasn't in the original, they added this in the enhanced version. No, this was always there. It's just you probably skipped it because it's really frustrating and annoying. And it loses a lot of points for me because it just detracts from the game. It wouldn't even be that bad if a lot of that dialogue was really relevant and interesting. A lot of it is not. Like, a huge proportion of it is just very flowery, very elaborate language to get over a very simple point that might have been done in 2 lines. And instead, it's 12 or 13 dialogue boxes going backwards and forwards, backwards and forwards. And it just was spoiled it for me. Like, I skipped... By the end, once that we got the point, which is usually in the first couple of lines, I did fast forward it because I just want to play the game. This is very frustrating to deal with this. And it loses a lot of points for me. Where it picks up a lot of points, though, is the replayability of this game. This is a 1,000-hour game if you want it to be. Creating crazy combos. The job system is phenomenal. It's phenomenal. The sheer amount of combos. I barely scratched the surface here. Really did. I didn't play around with Steel. I didn't play around with Ninja. I didn't play around with Samurai. I didn't play around with Arithmetician, Bard, Dancer, Mimic. I didn't touch them really at all. I played around with the others. But you could do some such interesting, crazy things with these characters. And really, I never played with any of the named units. The robots that come into it. Cloud Strife is in there. The Holy Knights, the Dark Knights, whatever they might be, that do all these new wonderful abilities. Sid, the Thunder God, has a whole array of abilities. I never used them. And there's so much loot and different modifiers that you can find if you can steal and you know what comes from. There's Genji armor in the game. All these sort of things all exist that I never even touched at all. Like, you could do playthrough after playthrough after playthrough. You could create crazy powerful characters who just have access to everything if you wanted them to. And set up builds that, like, just keep people away. Just so much stuff. So much replayability, and it gets a lot of credit for me for that. I'm not going to play it again, though. I'm good. I'm happy with where we're at. I'm ready to move forward. I've had my fill of it, and we beat the hardest mode, so I'm comfortable with where we are. It's a great story and a great retelling. I just wish I didn't have this yo-yo, because if it had just even maybe 50% of the in-game dialogue during battles, in between battles, don't care. That's the cutscene, that's the story moving forward, but the in-combat stuff, very annoying. Then it would be an S-tier game for me. But as it stands, it's a very high A. I'm super glad I played it, and I'm super glad so many people recommended it. Next on the list is Yakuza Infinite Wealth. I'm looking forward to some fun, some smiles, and some chit-chat with my audience on these whole things. So I'll see you then. Bye, guys.